Hello, and welcome to this session as one part of a six-part Main Street, Iowa orientation video series. Other videos in this series include in-depth presentations covering each of the Main Street 4 points, in addition to a discussion focused on the foundations of local Main Street program management. Today's session will go into more detail about the Main Street approach. This approach is the framework that guides the work of Main Street programs across the country and throughout Iowa. Our discussion today will cover the context of commercial district revitalization, the integrated process that is the Main Street approach, and the basics of the Main Street Iowa program as a support system for your local revitalization efforts. As you participate in this training, we challenge you to think about how each of the 4 points overlap. Hello, and welcome to this session as one part of a 6-part Main Street Iowa orientation video series. Other videos in this series include in-depth presentations covering each of the Main Street 4 points, in addition to a discussion focused on the foundations of local Main Street program management. Today's session will go into more detail about the Main Street approach. This approach is the framework that guides the work of Main Street programs across the country and throughout Iowa. Our discussion today will cover the context of commercial district revitalization, the integrated process that is the Main Street approach, and the basics of the Main Street Iowa program as a support system for your local revitalization efforts. As you participate in this training, we challenge you to think about how each of the 4 points overlap and support each other through this process, not as individual silos or isolated committees, but as a coordinated and powerful strategy for your local Main Street program. My name is Michael Wagler, Main Street Iowa State Coordinator, and I will be facilitating this conversation today. I am one member of the Main Street Iowa team, a team that is here to support your local Main Street with technical support, assistance, and connection to the broader Main Street network here in Iowa and across the country. When we think about the Main Street program, we have to think about the broader context in which Main Street exists. Today's conversation about the Main Street approach will use Main Street in 2 different ways. Main Street as a term will be used as the nonprofit organization that guides the local revitalization effort, as well as using Main Street as a descriptor of the physical district in which the Main Street program works within, the downtown. When you think about downtown as all the many parts that add up to the whole. That's the architecture, the small businesses, the upper floor housing, the public spaces, the transportation, the parking, the streetscape, street lights, banners, public art, all of these go into the comprehensive whole that is the Main Street program. When we think about moving forward with the Main Street program and what the Main Street program is in any community, we oftentimes start with a vision. The vision for what our community wants to be in 5, 10, 15, or 20 years into the future. Many times that vision looks a little bit something like this. A district that is vibrant with people on the street, maybe someone having coffee, a family walking to an activity or a shop or a restaurant, people going to and from work, the bike racks that are there demonstrating the multiple ways that people are providing their transportation to downtown. All of those elements of what a downtown could be can be wrapped up into that vibrant, historic commercial district that Main Street strives for in all communities. A quote that I really appreciate comes from Debbie Durham, the director of the Iowa Finance Authority and the Iowa Economic Development Authority, where Main Street Iowa is housed. Her quote is, "The future of economic development must include an emphasis on place-based economic development." That represents not only what the Main Street program is at its core, but it also represents that reality that where we are as an economy, where we are as a society, is that people are choosing where they want to live, or they have the opportunity to work wherever they can. So they're choosing where they want to live. So the idea that successful economic development is truly about creating a place where people want to be. That third place, first being home, second being work, third being that place that you're choosing to be outside of those spheres. The challenge with that is when we think about downtown revitalization, we saw that potential vision for the future of showing those vibrant downtowns. A lot of times downtowns start closer to this because of the transition over the course of time. So it's hard to see that vision through kind of who we are right now to what we want to be in the future. And part of getting through that challenging point of maybe where we are right now is really understanding what downtown is the symbol of, or the Main Street District is the symbol of. Everything from the economic health of the community to the local pride and quality of life, all the way down to a symbol of the economic opportunity for the future. One of the things that we continually have to think about is downtown revitalization is not an extracurricular activity for a local economic development strategy. Downtown revitalization is key to industrial, commercial, and professional recruitment, not only as the doorstep to the community, but also as that reality of whether we're recruiting a new superintendent, whether we're recruiting a new industrial, commercial candidate, or a new doctor. They all want to have their either themselves they want to live where they want to be, or they want to have their employees live in a place that they want to be in. So downtown becomes the heart of not only the community, but of those broader economic development efforts. To continue that story of talking about the value of downtown, we also could quantify some of that value. So when we look at the empty storefronts that may exist in your downtown or Main Street district, a number of years ago, we conducted a study on what is the cost to the community to have a vacant storefront. And it's approximately $220,000 per vacant storefront in your downtown. Now that number may sound high, that number may sound low. Whatever it is, identify, cut this in half, identify a number and then multiply it by the amount of vacant storefronts that exist in your downtown and quantify the economic opportunity that exists in your community. On that same line of thought, we also challenged our economic development consultant to think about what is the cost or that economic opportunity for each upper floor residential unit in our downtown districts, and that value is anywhere between $19,000 and $38,000, depending on the rent that is being gathered for that residential unit. But when you start to combine the economic opportunity that exists with some of the vacancies that may or may not exist in your downtown, that economic opportunity on an annual basis starts to tell a very powerful story of where we could be in the future. So how did we get to this point? Why are there programs dedicated towards the revitalization of downtowns? Well, downtown, the deterioration of downtown didn't happen overnight. It happened over the course of many years and decades. Some people look back to this and an event like this that happened all over the country in the mid-50s of the Federal Highway Act of 1956. The Federal Highway Act created the interstate highway systems that did substantially change how we as Americans live, work, travel, interact with business, shop, different things along those lines. So the interstate highway system did have a huge impact on how we interact with our downtown districts, many of them being bypassed or severely impacted by the interstate highway system. But you can't just look at one element. You have to look at all the different external variables, everything from single-use zoning to social changes like two-income households versus one-income households, the creation of suburban shopping malls in the 60s and the 70s, to category killers like Walmart, Target, big box stores, and now retailers like Amazon or major online retailers. All of these things come into play as we think about the downturn of the historic downtowns and commercial districts throughout our state. The other variable that we really have to think about is the economic variable. Back up until about the 1950s, each community had about a 20 to 30 mile ring around it that identified their market area. That market area, if everyone was drawn in from that economic reality, that could create sustainable stores, sustainable downtowns, and sustainable communities. If we fast forward 50 years, That 20 to 30 mile ring goes up to 50 to 60 mile ring, which is fine. You could say, all right, we know our market area, but the reality is here in Iowa, we have 940 plus communities, each of them with their own 50 to 60 mile ring, each of them beginning to overlap over the course of time, which forces our communities to really think about why is it that we exist that's different than the existence of the community just 10 miles down the road or the next county seat that is there. The map that I don't have shown here is the map that in between 2000 and 2010, those 50 to 60 mile rings really turned into worldwide rings as e-commerce began to get more accessible to communities, as the internet became accessible to communities across the country, even in more rural settings. That market area is now 50,000, 60,000, 100,000 miles. So it really reinforces that idea of how do we identify the challenges, but also leverage those as opportunities moving forward. But we can't just blame the downturn of our downtowns on external forces. We did a lot to our own downtowns, a lot to ourselves over the course of those last number of decades to impact the quality and the focus of our downtowns. Everything from inappropriate materials and techniques on the downtown buildings to just long neglected and deferred maintenance on our historic buildings. Maybe it's the altered windows that made some businesses obsolete in downtowns. I think we could all drive through downtowns, whether that be our own or others, that we see signage of businesses that have long gone, that are still up, kind of providing a reminder of who we used to be. The idea that many upper floors in our downtowns are vacant, which is a impediment to those buildings maximizing the economic income opportunity from having upper floor housing or use in the upper floor, all the way down to the internal influences of just relocating our government entities outside of downtown districts, which removes pedestrian foot traffic, which removes reasons for people to come downtown on a regular basis, not only just to go to those government entities, but if you come downtown to pay your water bill at City Hall, you may stop at one of the downtown shops. You may stop and grab lunch on your way out. Or if you work at the county courthouse, that downtown setting may be your third space as it relates to getting away from work. Moving those government entities outside of downtown has really created an impact on many communities, especially rural communities across our state. So in and around the late 70s into the early 80s, the National Trust for Historic Preservation created the Main Street America program. The Main Street America program is a national nonprofit that is a subsidiary of the National Trust for Historic Preservation that really took the idea of how do we move historic preservation from a single building out to the context of a historic commercial district and look at a comprehensive revitalization process. Main Street America is Main Street Iowa's national coordinating partner. Main Street Iowa is proud to be one of the strongest Main Street programs in the country. Main Street America also owns the copyright to the Main Street approach as it relates to downtown revitalization. So how Main Street America did what they did is they really backed into the idea of how do we look at reestablishing value in a place that's lost its value over the course of time. And they looked at it in a very comprehensive way. How do we reinject physical value, economic value, social value, and civic value into that downtown? Over the course of time, those four forces of value really created the framework for what became and is now known as the Main Street 4-point approach. So the civic value aligning with the organization point, social aligning with promotion, economic aligning with economic vitality, and physical aligning with design. The idea that these really start to create the foundation for not only who a local Main Street program is, but how a local downtown revitalization effort can be successful and sustainable into the future. This Main Street approach is the skeleton for all of that work as it relates to downtown development strategies. In a layman's term, organization develops partners, promotion develops the market, economic vitality develops business, and design develops space. They all integrate together in a consolidated and very strategic approach that starts with the creation of a local a community vision, layering on market understanding, defining transformation strategies that are overarching strategies that cross-cut those four forces of value or those 4 points, all the way leading into after the work has been done, how do we communicate the impact? How do we tell the story of the great work that we've been doing? And while this approach is demonstrated as a linear approach, it really is a circular approach that every 3 to 5 to 7 years, we're coming back around again and saying, is our vision still in line with who we want to be? How has our market changed to allow us to evolve that approach moving forward? So if the 4 points are the skeleton for the 4-point approach, the 8 guiding principles are the muscles. It's the kinetic energy that helps us move forward. These 8 guiding principles really start to outline how a Main Street program is successful long term. So the first of those 8 guiding principles is the fact that Main Street is a comprehensive approach. It's not just looking at how do we make our buildings, how do we improve our buildings, or how do we throw a really great downtown event, or how do we recruit all of the businesses and fill all of the storefronts. It's how do we inject all of those forces of values strategically across the board in economic vitality, promotion, organization, and design. The second principle is the fact that we are based around an incremental process. Downtown didn't get to where it is overnight. And on the flip side, the revitalization process can't happen overnight. So in some cases, we're doing it one building at a time, one business at a time, one flower at a time, one volunteer at a time, $1 at a time, one upper floor unit at a time. And all of these individual baby steps over the course of time add up to long range, large impacts in our downtown, demonstrating movement and momentum forward. The next principle is based on the idea of that Main Street focuses on quality versus quantity. And quality in everything we do, whether that be a website or a newsletter or a downtown event or a building rehabilitation project, we want to make sure that everything happening in the downtown is done in a quality fashion. That quality implementation reflects on how we could recruit volunteers, how we could raise money, and how we could influence other people in our community to implement quality improvements moving forward. Main Street is a public-private partnership. Downtown was not created by the public or the private sector alone, and thus it can't be revitalized by the public or the private sector alone. It takes the city, county, local nonprofits, building and business owners, local corporations, school districts, all of those folks come together to create a robust and thriving local Main Street program. The next principle talks about changing attitudes, and the idea that changing attitudes reflects from everything from the perception of downtown all the way to changing attitudes of how people integrate and engage with downtown. But big picture, there are about 20% of your population, your community's population, and really every community, that there are 20% of people that agree with everything that you do, no matter how it's paid for, when it happened, who's involved, what the end product is. Those are the people that are sitting around your board tables, they're attending events, they're investing in your organization and in your downtown. Those are those folks that are always going to be your advocates. On the other side of the spectrum, there's about 20% of your community that will disagree with everything you do, no matter who does it, where it happens, whose idea it was, how it was paid for, or even what the impact of that project was. Main Street teaches us that the reality that 20% is always going to be there. We have to learn to move on. We have to understand that we don't have enough patience or grace or time to turn their thumbs up, their thumbs down into a thumbs up. So what we need to focus on is that 60% in the middle. These are the folks that are going to go where it's the path of least resistance, where the event is the most fun, the music is the best, the beer is the coldest. These are the folks that are going to blow with the wind. So if that 20%, that thumbs up, can work on that 60% in the middle, now then at any given time we could have 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80% of our community rowing in the same direction, building on the momentum, building on that energy. And that's what we need to focus on, not building 100% consensus, but it's building that coalition of advocates to look at downtown in a new and exciting way. The next principle focuses on Main Street being economic development within the context of historic preservation. We are a historic preservation program that focuses on existing assets. Those existing assets are absolutely the historic buildings, the historic context that your downtown is in. In this case, in downtown Greenfield, it's the courthouse, it's the historic hotel, it's the opera house, it's the theater, it's the upper floor housing units. All of these are those existing assets. But as we think about identifying and leveraging existing assets, think beyond your downtown too. No downtown revitalization effort exists or is successful only within the bounds of the district that they work within. It's really about identifying the assets that exist throughout the community that create that great place to live, that great place to invest or to visit, and how we're learning to leverage those assets to create a stronger downtown into the future. Main Street is self-directed. It's a self-help program. I've learned very clearly over the course of time that no one is going to revitalize your community other than your community. Main Street is a great tool for your toolbox, but it is just that, is it a tool? So it's really how your program works to empower and engage local leaders, volunteers, and residents into taking the future of your downtown and your community into your own hands moving forward. And last but certainly not least is the fact that Main Street is an implementation-focused organization. We want your local Main Street program to be seen as the organization that gets things done. We're creating transformation strategies, we're identifying action plans, we're building out that committee structure with an army of volunteers, we're getting things done, we're telling that story, and we're starting that process all over again. As downtown continues to get stronger, as downtown gets to be more vibrant, we're taking on more sophisticated projects, and the movement continues to build. In Iowa, we have over 50 designated Main Street programs in all shapes and sizes, from Lansing at just under 1,000, all the way up to large downtowns in Dubuque and Waterloo and in Ames, or even in neighborhood commercial districts like the 6th Avenue corridor here in Des Moines or the Davenport Hilltop Campus Village. All of the programs have committed to using downtown revitalization as a key element to their local economic development strategies. And one of the things that I really appreciate about the Main Street program, it is rigid enough to know that you know what you're going to get as you are participating in the Main Street program. You know what the parameters are, but it is flexible enough to work in literally any community that wants to work the Main Street approach. That impact is being felt across the state of Iowa over the past 35 plus years. Main Street Iowa is a program of the Iowa Economic Development Authority. The Iowa Economic Development Authority is our state's agency that focuses on the economic development policies and guidance and vision into the future. The mission of the Main Street Iowa program is here on the screen. It is to improve the social and economic well-being of Iowa's communities by assisting selected communities to capitalize on their unique identity, assets, and character of their historic commercial district. I want to focus on a couple elements of the mission statement to reinforce the Main Street program's purpose, and that's by assisting a selected communities. So that last slide showed 50 plus communities that are designated Main Street communities. Each of those 50 plus communities have participated in a competitive application process to demonstrate their commitment to the Main Street program. And as well as maintaining that focus over the course of time through accreditation processes and ongoing activity. The second element is unique identity, assets, and character. They're again reinforcing the idea that Main Street is an asset-based economic development strategy. It's helping nurture the unique identity, assets, and character of your community to leverage them for future economic development success. And the last is the idea that Main Street does focus on a specific district, historic commercial district or a downtown district. So we are a laser approach to economic development, focusing the efforts and the capacity and the resources on the downtown district in a dense reinvestment strategy, and using the downtown revitalization process and hopefully success as a catalyst for further community development over the course of time. Whether it is a program that is applying to be a Main Street program or a Main Street program that's existed or participated for 10 plus years, we have a basic layer of expectations, everything from that continued broad base of community support and commitment to downtown revitalization, to the reality that there is a requirement to have paid local staff for the Main Street program and a nonprofit entity to drive and guide the focus of the program. Cities do have to be not only a philosophical, but a financial supporter of the operation of the local Main Street program. There needs to be that consistent understanding of the Main Street approach and what it means to be Main Street, as well as continuing education and ongoing accreditation expectations. In the end, we could talk about principles and approaches and points and expectations. But in the end, Main Streets that are successful come down to one thing. It's motivated, energetic people who are willing to see downtown for what it can be and not only for what it is, and to really empower volunteers to build out that army of committees and task forces. It's to inspire people to reinvest in a building or to invest in a new opportunity, and people who can bring people, partners together to really create the coalitions and collaborations that make downtown revitalization successful long-term into the future. Main Street Iowa as a program provides a lot of services, everything from grant opportunities and marketing partnerships, all the way up to the bulk of what we do, and that is the technical assistance and the accountability partnerships. We hope to be the behind-the-scenes staff that helps support everything that you're doing as a local Main Street program. Our team is grateful to have 9 people that are dedicated to the work of the local Main Street program through the Iowa Downtown Resource Center that provides limited and fee-based services to all downtowns, or to designated Main Street communities where this team of long-term commercial revitalization professionals are dedicated to supporting that Main Street network. A couple resources that exist that could help you continue your education process. Of course, as you heard right from the get-go, this is one part of a 6-part orientation series. So I do encourage you to watch the other parts of the Main Street Basics video series that dive into each of the 4 points and program management. But on our website, we also have a link to the Main Street Program Leadership Guidebook. This goes through everything that I've talked about here, as well as taking some deep dives on some topics related to nonprofit management, as well as successful Main Street program work. Our national partners at Main Street America also have a really great guidebook that talks about the Main Street 4-point approach from a broader perspective, but also goes into a little bit more detail on understanding and developing transformation strategies for local success. One last resource to talk about is just a simple checklist that our team has developed on the characteristics of a successful downtown. And this is a self-evaluation tool that you can use with your local boards of directors or your design committee, economic vitality committee, volunteers, or if you're interested in applying to be a Main Street program, this would be a great exercise for your steering committee. It just asks different folks to go around and check boxes of things that you do have, and really what it does on the end is it identifies some areas of opportunity as we start to look at some kind of low-hanging fruit or critical elements to creating success long-term in your downtown. Main Street is a grassroots economic development program. It focuses on downtown revitalization as a catalyst for community development. Main Street is a program of the Iowa Economic Development Authority, and most importantly, Main Street Iowa is here to support you and your local program through your downtown revitalization journey. Some key contacts would be myself, Michael Wagler, or Carol Lilly, who is our Main Street Development Specialist, or anyone on the Main Street Iowa team can provide ongoing resources and support for your local revitalization efforts. Thank you and have a great day.